I love the writings of H.G. Wells. I also love the writings of Riichiro Nagaki. Both of them are great writers, but one is taught in colleges while the other one isn't. Why is that?
Anime can inspire creativity and encourage the development of critical thinking skills through its rich narratives and intricate character development. Universities have an ivory tower mentality, so they hesitate to teach anime because of the perception that it lacks academic rigor compared to traditional subjects. Bridging the gap between different forms of written literature and animated media, anime has the same laudable themes of overcoming adversity and speak to the human condition. But both of my parents, who are college professors, do not see it that way. They look down on anime. In order to combat this, my brother and I snuck into the professor's office and turned it into our podcast studio and filled it with manga and other anime items.
So please, join my brother and I as we try to convince our father, the professor, that anime is in fact literature and should be treated as such.
I've gotten to the point where I'm looking forward to see what outfit you're going to be dressed up in when we start this podcast. If anything, I was telling David ahead of time, like, is Nathaniel going to pull something else again? But up to this point, it's always a good thing to see.
You like my lab outfit?
It's something. It's an outfit of something. I don't know if it's a lab outfit. You have like 3 goggles on, dude.
Safety, bro. You have to protect the forehead, the eyes, the hairline.
Safety first.
Apparently. Unlike you.
What do you mean?
You may have glasses on, but you ain't got no safety goggles on.
No, this is used as safety goggles and so that I can read and see. What are you talking about?
Okay, so you're saying that if those get damaged, you can't read and see? Got to protect those, man.
What are these?
Goggles.
Dude, these are just range glasses. They're scratched. Heck, I don't want to wear these.
Okay, well, then I guess you'll be bumping into walls real soon, because...
Okay, I can wear them like this for a little bit if you want. Does that make you happy?
I
happy
guess.
in your heart?
Protecting your hairline.
Okay. Well, I'm not worrying if you're making fun of my hairline. Okay, let's go ahead and get going to what we're going to be talking about today. I'm actually kind of excited. This is, if there's one thing about the podcast that I was looking forward to, was actually coming up with interesting topics to compare and analyze. I've told you in the past, what's one of the best characteristics you could have?
Self-motivation.
Self-motivation, be an autodidact, be a polymath, to know a lot of different topics, a lot of different issues. That's great. But I said, try to be what?
Interesting.
Interesting. One of the best qualities you can have is to be an interesting person, to be interesting. And it's very hard to fake interesting. Interesting always has to be an extension of substance, right? Sense of creativity, ingenuity. If anyone knows Bloom taxonomy, whether you like it or not, the highest part is creativity. And so when you told me this topic that you wanted to go through today, because I thought we were just going to do a Dr. Stone manga analysis and have another long conversation of why you think manga and anime is literature. But when you created the structure of this and told me what it was when we had this conversation a couple of days ago, I was actually fascinated. So let me go ahead and stop, and I don't want to go too far into it, but you want to do a comparative literary analysis of 2 artifacts, 2 sources. Go ahead and take it from here. What are the 2 sources, and why did you want to do those 2?
Okay, let me ask you a question. You mean for the further episodes or just for this one?
Just for this one.
Okay. 2 other episodes are going to be litty too, but for this specific episode, I want to cover 1, The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. You know that book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Classic.
Dude, I read it with you guys way back when.
Mm-hmm. And then number 2, that one conversation, remember we had about a week ago, The Prestige, how you compared the Prestige to The Time Machine, which I guess is kind of off topic, but I mean, it's almost like Time Machine is our median here, and then we have Dr. Stone on one end and The Prestige on the other.
Yeah, that'll be a little bit off topic, but I don't mind going into that divagation. So
like you said, it's interesting.
Yeah, let's just try to be interesting today to an extent. So you want to do a literary comparison of Dr. Stone, the manga Dr. Stone, and will include aspects of the anime as well, and Time Machine. On the face of it, I was like, what are you talking about? Until you started to explain it to me. And it's a perfect example of almost a collegiate, literary analysis, because at the collegiate level, there has to be a sense of ingenuity and creativity when it comes to interpretation. So let's go ahead and let me frame this for us. Let me give a frame where we're going to take this from, because I'm trying to repeat, and I don't want to bogart your approach. I don't know if you're going to include it, but go ahead and go through your initial discussion with me of why you're using the term and the lens of an anachronism for both of these artifacts, both Dr. Stone and Time Machine.
Okay, well, put it simply, the word anachronism means out of time, right? If you, let's say you're in the year 4 BC or whatever, and you find a smartphone, that's out of time. It's not supposed to, no way.
So out of time, out of place. Something that's
Yeah.
out of its place.
There's
in
no
the given
way
time.
a
Okay.
smartphone can be invented in 4 BC. You right?
Right.
It's out of time. David, could you give actually like a more detailed definition?
Well, the word anachronism is something belonging or appropriate to a period other than which it's supposed to exist or is, the word is, portrayed.
Okay. So that's the definition, but from me, when I'm a logophile.
Okay.
I like building lexicon. One of the best suggestions I can give you, and this shouldn't go for words, it should go for everything. If you come across a word you don't know, stop and look it up. I keep a journal with words I don't know at the end, not because I want to be high-minded, have a lot of big words. It's just there's a beauty to language, there's a beauty to communication, which is one of the core of what we're talking about here, the value of academic communication. Go ahead.
I mean, I wouldn't stop mid-reading or whatever you're reading. I'd just like jot it down in a journal, then go look it up.
Use your
after.
method. Any method you use in order to go revisit later is always a good thing. You should always be revisiting content and information. But one of the things I'm trying to explain is another good supplemental application when it comes to you looking up words is go check the etymology. Like, I really enjoy English as a language. English is great. My progenitors actually came from Spain. It came from the Cambria area of northern Spain. And I love the romantic languages. For some reason, I think jokes are funnier in Spanish. However, there's a beauty and accessibility to English that other languages don't have. I'll give you an example. English is a hybridization of Germanic roots and Latin roots. It even has hybridization of words in the Greek and the Latin. And because of that, it has a lot of different approaches when it comes to descriptions. I love the uses of prepositions. Prepositional phrases. People don't like using prepositional phrases all the time. And of course, you can get to the grammatical error if you can't end a sentence with a preposition, but there's a beauty in its description and bringing in additional information to the content that you have, right? So I always suggest that when you're looking at words, always check the etymology of the words.
Without going all grammar nerd, I did look up the etymology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what it means is Latin root, anachronismus, Latin. But technically the word anachronism is split up into 2 Latin words. First, ana, second is chronis.
Mm-hmm.
Ana meaning against, and chronis meaning time. So basically the root word is against time.
Right. Which, see, this is what gives you the context of the benefit of your comparison. Because is Time Machine a time traveling story? Obviously, it is.
Before we get too into it, right? Some of our audience might not know what the time traveler is, so really quick, spoilers. David, please roll the recap.
A brilliant but eccentric Victorian scientist, known only as the Time Traveler, invents a machine capable of moving through time. After a small-scale demonstration for skeptical friends, he embarks on a solo journey into the far future. He arrives in the year 2701 AD, and discovers a world that appears peaceful and idyllic, inhabited by a gentle and passive people called the Eloi. They live in a crumbling paradise, seemingly free from hardship, but also lacking curiosity, intelligence, and drive. As the time traveler explores, he realizes something is wrong. His time machine goes missing. In his search for it, he discovers a second race, the Morlocks, pale, nocturnal creatures who live underground and maintain the remnants of machinery that support the surface world. Gradually, he uncovers a disturbing truth. The Morlocks raise and consume the Eloi, a horrifying result of the class divisions that once separated the rich and the poor. Determined to retrieve his machine, the time traveler ventures into the Morlocks' underground lairs, narrowly escaping death. Eventually, he recovers the time machine and escapes further into the future, witnessing the Earth's slow death as the sun dims and strange creatures roam a desolate landscape. Finally, he returns to his own time and recounts his story to his dinner guests. They doubt his tale, thinking it a fantasy or hallucination. The next day, the time traveler sets out again, promising to return soon, but he vanishes into the future, never to be seen again.
Which, see, this is what gives you the context of the benefit of your comparison. Because is Time Machine a time traveling story? Obviously it is. And this is one of the arguments you're trying to make. One of the arguments you're trying to make is that Dr. Stone is also a time traveling story, right? Which is kind of interesting. So, which one do you want to talk about first?
Well,
Time Machine, since we just did the cutaway to the David's intro. You want to do Time Machine first or what?
Actually, could you really quickly go over the Prestige, your theory, just to give it a little bit of context?
Why do you want to go over that?
It's a very interesting theory. I don't think anyone... I looked it up. No one's thought of it before.
Sure. Okay, fine. I don't mind going over that level of the discussion if you want to. That's fine. Okay. So, have you seen the movie Prestige?
No, I have not. I
Okay.
think Hugh Jackman's in it, though.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman's in it. It's done by Nolan, and it has Christian Bale, the guy who did Batman, in it. And the Prestige pretty much covers in a very creative way, almost like the process is what they consider to be almost like a 3-step move when it comes to magic tricks, right? According to them, I haven't done too much research on this, but this is what you do. You grab different sources and different information and bring it together to create an interpretation. The interpretation does not have to be right. I'm not looking for right. If the mantra is interesting, let's stay there. So according to the movie, there's like 3 stages of any magic trick. You have the pledge, you have the turn, you have the prestige. The pledge itself is where a magician introduces something that's familiar to the audience, something that seems to be like unremarkable or not different, so people can acclimate to it. And the design of it is so that people will trust, almost like the magician up there, the audience trusts it, you know, and they believe what they're seeing is genuine, that there isn't any trickery. Going once again, then in the movie, you have the turn. The turn, this is the transformation phrase where the magician does something that's astonishing, that all of a sudden everyone in the audience is like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Like making something disappear or transforming something or shifting something. This is where the illusion happens, and people think that's where the magic is, but this isn't enough. The last piece is the title of the entire movie is the prestige. This is the climax. This is the climax of the illusion where the magician actually restores back the original object. He creates something within the final twist that you're like, oh, he made it disappear, but it's not significant unless he brings it back. To make something disappear has a lot of questions. To bring it back shows a sense of ability and authority, and it's what they consider to be the dramatic emotional payoff, right? Okay, so how does this compare in an interpretation of Time Machine? If you look at Time Machine, anyone who buys into reading the story is that you have a time traveler that meets with a bunch of friends on a Thursday night, and he's pretty much saying, hey, listen, let me show you a new invention. But if you look at the structure of the time traveler, the structure of the narrative, the structure of the storytelling, it actually follows this magician's process, you know what I mean, of almost like the presentation, the turn, the prestige, all this kind of thing. Like, let me give you an example. There are references in the chapters, I believe it's like first chapter 1 and chapter 2, in which, let me ask you a question. Do you ever know who the narrator is?
No, but I know he's not the time traveler.
Right. Not really. The only proper name that's pretty much used in the entire story.
Fibley, right?
Yeah, Fibley. Okay. Other than that, there aren't any names. It's the time traveler. It's the psychologist. Yeah. You know, it's the journalist. It's all that kind of stuff.
So you can assume that the narrator's close to Fibley, or
you're assuming that you're keeping things general, but there are some descriptions early on in the time traveler. There's first 2 is that he's not necessarily financially rich, and the second one is that he's not very trustworthy. The author or the narrator brings up earlier that he pulled a ghost trick one time, and people are very suspicious of what he says or does. He literally says in the book, if someone else had made the argument that the time traveler did, they would have trusted him more. So it sticks in that he's an unreliable storyteller because the narrative shifts from the narrator to the time traveler. You know what I mean? And so there's this part of let's follow the steps within the magic trick, right? The first thing that the time traveler does is he tells a theoretical story.
The pledge, right?
Well, right. So he's saying, listen, there's 4 dimensions. You know, you have length, width, depth. But then he's also talking about time. He's talking about the way that you can navigate through time. And H.G. does a beautiful job in these descriptions. But then what he does immediately after that, is he brings in this little model. and he places it on the table, and he almost follows the rhetoric and the narration of someone who's doing a magic trick. He's like, watch, I'm not touching it. Please inspect the table. Please inspect the room. Make sure everything's okay. If anything, I'm not going to push the knob. Let's have a volunteer come up and push the knob. And then when he does, whoom, it disappears. And then, of course, so guess what you have to do?
Bring it back.
But the moment of bringing it back isn't when he takes him to his lab and shows him his big time machine, which just so conveniently isn't unfinished. You would think that if this truly worked, that when he left in the big time machine, that's when he would have his audience. But instead, he invites him back the next following Thursday. I don't know why he can't time machine back to that Thursday, but he invites him back the next following Thursday. This time he has an editor and journalist there, and he shows up, and he's all beaten and bruised, and he's like, oh no, I can't talk yet. Let me go upstairs and wash up, and then I'll tell you my story. And that's what he does. He then tells this crazy story, and then at the end, so he comes back, and then what happens at the end? Boom, he's gone again. So it follows a magician's trick very closely. Now, is this the correct interpretation?
No.
But is it an interesting one?
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the first major point, right? We're covering Dr. Stone, but let's focus on the time travel, or the time traveler story, for what it is. I mean, I told you I looked it up, so I haven't found anyone that compares it to The Prestige. So that means everyone and their mom thinks that it's a time traveling story, right?
It's called The Time Machine. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so it's not some like satire or some joke or some magic.
Of course, it could be not a satire, but of course, it could be kind of like an allegory. Of course, it could be like a lyric model of a social commentary, right? But keep going.
Okay, so the first year he goes into, right, is 802,701 AD. I believe I got that right.
Yeah, there's no explanation in the book of why he chooses that date, like zero whatsoever. You know what I mean?
I think in like the old 1960 movies, the reason he chose that date is because when he started time traveling, he was like so mesmerized and the war happened, so he couldn't end there. Then a mountain grew over him and he had to wait for the mountain to dissipate before he could like finally stop. I think that's what the explanation was in the movie. But, and I'm talking about the 1960s one, like the really, really old one. But I like, the reason I think it compares to Dr. Stone is because there's like a downfall of how humanity just like it reverts down, you know, like kind of back to their animalistic natures. You have the Morlocks and the Eloi, right? Some really just succumb to their animalistic instincts. That's the Warlocks, while the others are used as cattle. I don't even think they're treated like normal humans.
Yeah, right. So this is so he goes to 800,000 years into the future. And this is where you have like a hermeneutic plot. You don't know what's going on. There's this really cool line in there. Actually, I would like to look it up. The next time we talk, I'll look it up in my phone because it's a really good quote in there that discusses that he recognized that his interpretations aren't always correct. No matter how logical you are in collecting information, what you perceive to be correct isn't always correct. And when he sees the structure of things, first he's critical of like the Eloi. Then all of a sudden when he sees the Morlocks, he has one interpretation that isn't correct. He's like, oh, so the Eloi are actually oppressing the Morlocks, you know, kind of thing. When, of course, you have the moment of revealing, and the revealing is that the Eloi are actually cattle, right? They're being processed and consumed by the Morlocks. This is the dun, dun, dun kind of moment, right? This is like how to serve, you know, man, kind of like the idea of like, oh, they're here to serve us, but more really they're there to kill you and exploit you. Any structure of really any government that there is. But you're comparing it to Dr. Stone and the
how
structure
they, like,
of
regress.
it. Right, but the structure of it is kind of like a naturalistic anarchy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So when things reset completely, you're not just trying to establish a structure of society, you're starting to establish a structure of like government and how to function within that new naturism, right? And so the revealing in Time Traveler is you don't know what the structure of things are. In Dr. Stone, though, right? Actually, do you want to pause and do a... Can I do your thing?
Okay.
Hey, guys, spoilers ahead. David, roll the Dr. Stone recap.
Thousands of years ago, in an instant that defied explanation, a blinding green light washed over the earth, and every human being turned to stone. Frozen in time, humanity vanished as nature slowly reclaimed the world. Trees overran cities, animals roamed free, and civilization crumbled to dust. but in the ruins of the old world, a single spark of hope remained. Over 3,700 years later, a brilliant high school student named Senku Ishigami awakens from his petrified slumber. Armed only with his razor-sharp intellect and a boundless love for science, Senku vows to rebuild civilization from the ground up. Soon after, Senku revives his best friend Taiju Oki, a brawny and determined teen who had spent millennia trying to stay conscious for one purpose, confessing his love to their classmate Yuzuriha. Working together, Senku and Taiju discover the formula to reverse the petrification, nitric acid mixed with alcohol, and begin their mission to bring humanity back. However, their third revival is a mistake. Tsukasa Shishio, a powerful martial artist, who quickly reveals his own vision for the new world, one without adults, corruption, or the flaws of the old society. Tsukasa becomes a dangerous adversary, breaking from Senku and building his own empire, one rooted in strength, not science. To escape Tsukasa's growing power, Senku travels deep into the wilderness, where he stumbles upon a primitive village untouched by the past. There, he meets Kohaku, a fierce warrior girl, and Chrome, a self-taught sorcerer with a curious mind. As Senku earns the trust of the villagers, he learns that the village, named Ishigami Village, may be more connected to his past than he realizes. Driven by his dream of reviving the old world through scientific progress, Senku forms the Kingdom of Science. Step by step, he recreates the marvels of human achievement, from glass to electricity, from antibiotics to ramen. Every invention is a triumph, both against nature and against time. But Tsukasa's empire is growing, and the clash of ideologies looms ever closer. As the season draws to a close, Senku and his allies set out to build their most ambitious invention yet, a functioning communication device to turn the tide in the battle between brute force and brilliant minds. The stone world has changed, but so has Senku. With science as his weapon and friendship as his foundation, he's not just trying to survive, he's planning to reignite the flame of civilization.
So I want to talk about how when Senku finds Ishigami Village, right, that one village that was untouched by petrification, little spoilers. So Senku learns that the village was founded by astronauts who were unaffected by the petrification because they were in space. One of which astronauts was Senku's adoptive father, Byakuya Ishigami, and the village becomes central to Senku's plan to like rebuild society, like his base of operations, right? Mm-hmm. So what I kind of want to talk about is social stratifications, right? And what I mean by that is the classification of like almost like a pecking order. Do you think there's
right, the establishment of a hierarchy within a social structure? Okay.
So what I wanted to ask you is, do you think that would happen? Like, obviously Senku's the top because he knows the most, but do you think there will be like later in the book?
Right, so you're having a clash of two. Okay, so this is where the story is interesting. This is why people like reading Dr. Stone, because you're having a clash between like almost kind of like this village that's kind of like agrarian, agricultural, they don't have much technology, and then someone who's coming in with all this knowledge. And if you're talking about the stratification, typically within that structure, you're going to have a a discrepancy within the hierarchy. You're going to have a strong separation of power. I mean, one of the biggest aspects of progressions of power is controlling information. Who has the technology? I mean, looking at World War I and the Battle of Empires, the Battle of Nations, it's always kind of like this industrial technological development of weaponry, and then you have the clash, right? So you have a disparate kind of like possession of knowledge and information. So when you're looking at how on earth could you have an equality within the village if someone like Senku comes in, because the first thing he does is disturb their old practices, right? Mm-hmm. Because they have to battle, for the
priestess or bride,
her hand and stuff, and she's sick, and he develops antibiotics and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm trying to find it. well, anyway, we'll look at it later. But there's specifically the idea of Senku having this technological advancement, this scientific advancement, how he's going to treat it in the way that the stratification or the structure of the society is going to develop is the interesting part of why you would watch the anime or read the book. Like dude, what's going to happen next, right?
Mhm.
Typically, if you have a culture or society or a tribe that's super powerful like Tsukasa, they win. They win. Oh, but wait, here's the trick. Here's the trump card. Here's the prestige. Here's the whatever. He has the knowledge and the information. So what's interesting when it comes to Senku is going to be the relationships that he's formed. Because right now he needs the people in the village. He needs the numbers to help not just develop his technologies, but also to beat Tsukasa.
Yeah, he.
The
develops
question
the
is, I
wrong
don't know what
card.
happens later because I've only read, what do you call it, up to book like 5 and then saw season 1. But right now he is reliant on the people within the village. So the social stratification is pretty tightly knit. There's within the social contract, a reliance on each other. So the hierarchy is pretty like minimal, right?
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that there isn't a positive interpretation since Seiku is sharing the knowledge with the people in the village, right? What was the second point you wanted to hit?
Group group solidarity and identity, right? So in Ishigami village, the villagers form a strong identity based on shared myths, ancestry, and customs.
Right.
There was this one story, I don't remember the name of the guy, but it was actually an old anime. And in this world, there was actually an old anime that piqued Senku's interest, because how would they know about anime, right?
Mm-hmm.
How would they know about this one guy? How would they know about gorillas when gorillas don't exist in Japan?
Right.
So that's kind of what I wanted to talk
Yeah.
about.
There's multiple layers here that are going on, different relationships. It's not just the battle between Senku and Tsukasa. That's not just it. It's also his relationship with the people in the village, because the classes within the village is the difference between like a scientific rationalism and traditional beliefs. You know, something that's culturally committed, something that's within the mythos, something that's within the zeitgeist. I mean, the entire cultural structure that's been there for thousands of years within that village, right? And then all of a sudden you have the disabling that entire structure, that entire system within the scientific knowledge that Senku has. So what's going to happen is one going to oppose the other, or there's going to be a balance between the two, right? Because once again, I kind of mentioned this just earlier before, is that there is a conflict between might is right and then the scientific kind of like prosperity of modernism. I mean, that's glazed under the idea of a natural anarchy that's there, and then how is society going to be structured afterwards. But also, there is that conflict between the traditional beliefs of the people within the village and within Senku. And so, once again, is this going to be a marriage or relationship of necessity, or is something new and balanced going to emerge?
So I want to tie everything back together. We talked about Time Machine, Dr. Stone, and the Prestige. We've compared Time Machine to Dr. Stone, and we've compared Time Machine to the Prestige, right? How the Time Machine could be an illusion, right? There's some solid evidence you've shown me.
Depending on the interpretation of the book, right?
Yeah. But then again, I don't want to... obviously, Dr. Stone isn't an illusion or theatrical performance, but there's this one character. His name is Gin Asaragi, and what he did, and what he is he's a mentalist. There's an entire scene where these villagers are about to come and beat up Senku. That's his name. I was about to say Sukuna. They're about coming to beat up Senku, and he's like, "Listen, no, look, it's a magical performance." And he just like the hand trick where you can flick the card behind you, and he does it with some flowers, tricking them completely. And they're like, "Fine, do whatever you want." So, do you think that there could be like some technological mystification or like theatrical appeal to science in that way? You know?
Right. I think this is why I was looking forward to doing this episode, because I think it's very nuanced, the argument you're making. I don't know how solid it is, but it's still very nuanced. You made a comparison with Time Machine and Dr. Stone, and they're both time travel narratives. You then get to the structure of almost like this very naturalistic anarchy where society has crumbled. Now you're building new societies. What does that look like? And then there's a difference between scientific explanation to structure these societies and really the way that you can have this mystical, fake, faux, pseudo-science that can cause people to have the same kind of effect with zero benefit. And this, when it comes to academia, not just academia, but man, your worldview, the way that you interpret information, like this actually goes for both of you specifically, okay? Um, Science is important, and you have to have a recognition that real science is almost like systematic. It has to be skeptical. It's evidence based. And a lot of the time it can be co-opted. It can be misrepresented. There are ways in which people can blur the boundaries between real scientific research and delusions. And what happens is you have to have the intelligence to know the difference between real discoveries that are done through academic work and manufactured perceptions. This is why we hit so often in academia the idea of cognitive bias. You're seeing this right now in our age of not just like gaslighting, misinformation, rhetorical strategies that tend to manipulate people. You're seeing it within the scientific community too. People don't realize that so much of what published science is government funded, filling a government narrative. This has to do when science can be co-opted in order to fit within hierarchical power structures. And this is where almost like Dr. Stone, Sekou, and Tsukasa, you can have a problem. Sometimes people use the name of science to enforce aspects of their own power hierarchy, but they're doing it in such a way that they're claiming is unifying society, when in reality it's been co-opted, manipulated, and controlled just to suppress populations. You can see this right now within the Western world all over the place. I don't want to get political, and I don't want to get too kind of like
conspiracy theory.
It's not conspiracy. I mean, it takes a basic interpretation to see that the way that things are happening within the degeneration of a Western society, right? The funny thing is when you look at either Time Machine or Dr. Stone, it took thousands of years to get there. It looks for us, if we're not careful, it could be around the corner. That's why a lot of the times it's fun to have these academic conversations, but the reason why there needs to be so much rigor and value to it is because even within these narratives, you can have in the end some magic trick that convinces you of an illusion being a reality, when in the end all it is something that's there to trick you and suppress you.
Was it Mark Twain who said, I don't know, or what? I think it was actually Einstein. I was like, I know not what World War III would be fought with, but
Nope,
I know
I know not World War III, but yeah, go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
don't know what World War III will be fought with, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones.
That's exactly right. Going to another quote, I wanted to look it up really quick. I did like that point at the end of chapter 4 of Time Machine. If I can find it, I don't want to take too much time because I know we're going to end up calling it a day.
Yeah, 30-minute marker.
Yeah.
Kind of passed it a little bit.
But here it is. It's in chapter 4 at the end of it. When the time traveler is literally telling himself he recognizes that some of his interpretations were incorrect. He says, as I stood there in the gathering dark, I thought that in this simple explanation, I had mastered the problem of the world, mastered the whole secret of these delicious people. Possibly the checks that they had devised for the increase of population had succeeded too well, and their numbers had rather diminished than kept stationary. That would account for the abandoned ruins. Very simple was my explanation and plausible enough, as most wrong theories are.
Yeah.
And one of the things I want to emphasize at the end of this is one of the most honest approaches to any kind of academic pursuit or any kind of academic conversation is to realize that you're not right all the time. There's nothing wrong with shining a light on your weaknesses. There's nothing wrong with falling back and saying, I'm wrong, I don't know. I had this one professor in college, one of my favorites. I didn't go into math. I went to history and English, but he was a math professor. And he would have us go do problems on the board. I mean, this is college. He was calling me and go do on the board. And he said to us, it's okay to say, I don't know the answer. I don't know. But you can only say it once. Because after you say, I don't know, it's then attendant on you to go find out. Trying to, beg the question or force an answer to a hypothesis that isn't proved creates so much room for error that in the end, some people try to prove it by a nice little card trick. So at least in the end, they're proved right, even though deep down they know they're in error.
I mean, really quick, just this entire theory, it's a theory about the time traveler and the prestige, right? A theory of interpretation or a lens of interpretation.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing here, son. When it comes to this kind of stuff, it has nothing to do about being right. It has to do with the discussion, right? And so that's why I'm willing to entertain, because you know my position on this. I don't think anime is academic literature, but there's a possibility that, I don't have the level of creativity to interpret it the right way. So that's why I'm willing to have the dialogue. So if anything, you like your goggles on your forehead, I don't mind wearing goggles on my forehead. You want to defend that anime is literature, I'll be happy to have that conversation, because the one thing that will defeat my kind of like confirmation bias would to stop and like, hey, listen, let me pay attention. Let me entertain the idea, and then maybe you and I will find some better common ground.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay. Anything else, Nathaniel, or is this good enough for today?
I mean, everything in here is too expensive to conduct an experiment, so who knows? Maybe you'll wake up with a surprise in your bedroom of a baking soda volcano.
Okay, son. We'll take it from there, okay? I'll see you next time.
Okay, bye.
Thank you guys so much for checking out my channel. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button, like, and share the video for more. And if you want to see more videos like this, hit the notification bell for more videos when they're uploaded. And so we can show our father that anime is worth his time.